Good morning. It is Friday, December 17th at 9:10 in the morning. How's everybody doing? This is Larry Cedar. Hi. I'm back with you for another session on what I call Sqanning, spelled Sqanning. Sqanning is a completely made-up spelling of the word scanning, Scanning. It's called Sqanning because we're going to be doing something which scans the body for muscular tension. Sqanning, by definition, is a relaxation technique which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. So basically, in a nutshell, we are going to induce a state of calm through the release of muscular tension. So squeeze your hands together and release. That sense of release, that's what we're going to be practicing. It's a very simple process, scanning, very simple to learn. The difficulty, the challenge is getting yourself to do it regularly. That's the discipline, that's the practice. But the benefits are tremendous. Again, there is the drawback of having to get disciplined at it, of having to put in the time, but the process itself is very simple and it yields tremendous results. And very quickly today, I will just say that all of this is based on the writings of a man named Thaddeus Golis. He didn't have a relaxation technique, but he basically talked about the two fundamental processes of the universe, those being contraction, squeeze your hands together to see what that feels like, and expansion, release. Everything in the universe based on those two processes. Everything you see, feel, touch, learn about, think about, experience is based in either one of those two processes or somewhere in between. I call that the contraction, expansion continuum. So everything is somewhere on that spectrum. Very contracted, completely imploded would be something which is completely imploded would be the one extreme of contraction, and completely dissipated or permeable would be the opposite, or expansion. So when you look at the world in that way, if you accept that premise, and today we're just going to jump right into it, we're not going to spend too much time on it because I really want to just look at the technique. You can assess yourself at any given moment and any given day or time as to where you are on that spectrum. Contraction, expansion. Where am I today? This moment, this second, am I more contracted or am I more expanded? Both have value. Both are a fundamental part of life. There's neither all bad or all good about either of them. It's great to be completely contracted because that means you've created something, you've brought things together, you've advanced an agenda. That's contraction, that's the stuff of life. It's also great to be expanded. That means you've let go, you've released, you become permeable, accepting, open. So they both have value. What you want, the goal in life, is to achieve a balance between the two, and that's why we call it centered. Centered. So because we spend most of our day, most of our lives contracting as a human being, you became a contraction when you formed into a human being, and then from the moment you were born, you began accepting and taking on identities and processes and agendas and careers. That's a contracted process. Because we spend most of our time contracting, we tend to become overly contracted. Now, what does it feel like to be overly contracted? Well, there's the positives, which means you're getting something done. You've written a book, you've made a speech, you built a building. These are the positives, but you can become overly contracted, and that's when you are closed off, tense, restricted, limited, in denial, tense. So that's when we feel bad. In my life, what I experienced, and the reason I came up with this technique, is when I felt bad, I tended to be overly contracted. The solution: to expand. So how do you expand? Well, there's a bunch of ways. There's a million ways. But the one I wanted to achieve and develop was one that made me self-sufficient, in that I could do it myself without having to take a drink or smoke a joint or go to a therapist or a chiropractor or take an expensive vacation. I wanted to be able to expand on my own at any given moment. And what I discovered was that through the release of muscular tension, I expanded. Now, muscles can either do one of two things: contract, make a fist, or release, expand. That's all they can do, or be somewhere in between. So we use the muscles as a metaphor to bring us into a more expanded state. As the muscle relaxes, that part of you becomes expanded. This influences the rest of your body, including your mind, which, like a muscle, contracts and holds on to thoughts, obsessive ideas, and concerns and worries. It, by association, relaxes, lets go of those thoughts, and you come to a place of physical, emotional, and mental calm. And we say incremental muscle relief because you can only contract or expand. You can't do both at the same time. So any amount Any amount of expansion counts towards movement away from contraction. So we do it incrementally, small, simple little steps, small amounts of muscular relaxation throughout the body. We scan the body looking for pockets of contraction or tension, and we release them. And we do this over the space of 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever time you can spare. Any amount helps. And the reason that's good is because there's no excuse to not do it. It's so simple. I can sit here right now and go, take a breath. And I've just released a small amount of muscular tension, and that works. That's moved me away from contraction. So we're going to go through the body now. We're going to go through what I call the muscular zones, and we're going to practice this incremental release of muscular tension and see what it does for us. And it's important while you're doing this to assess, how have I changed? Take a note of how it feels to be slightly more expanded, less contracted, more expanded. And that's the technique. That's scanning. And if it seems too simple, trust me, it's very challenging to stay with it. There are going to be times when you go to scan and you're just going to be incredibly resistant to the process. Your mind, your body, everything about you is not going to want to stop contracting. It's a safe, habitual position, and you will feel tremendous resistance. I will tell you that when I start these sessions for myself, I'm tremendously resistant. I almost go to war with myself, trying to convince myself that it's okay to let go, let go, let go. So let's see. I did it. 5 minutes introduction. I try to keep it short so we can spend most of the session actually practicing scanning. So let's do that. We start with breaths. And these breaths, someone asked me yesterday after the preliminaries, which are the breaths, if these breaths need to be fast or very strong. No. The whole idea of the breath as an introductory process to this whole technique is that it gets you to generally start expanding. When you take a breath, your lungs expand. So it's a very basic, at its most basic, simple, expansive step. You're opening yourself up. You know, so often when I'm in a contracted state, I find myself holding my breath, because when you contract, you hold. So when you take a deep breath, it forces you to expand. And it's just a way to kind of get you in an expansive state. So we start with 3 deep breaths, followed by 15 seconds of stillness and silence. Stillness is the opposite of action, which is contractive. And silence is the opposite of sound or noise, which we make when we want to communicate or anything of that sort. And that takes a contraction of sorts, so we become still and silent, more expansion. Here we go. 3 deep breaths, followed by 15 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. But continue to breathe. Here we go. 3 breaths. 15 seconds, don't move a muscle, but continue to breathe. So now we've begun. Someone asked me yesterday if you need to breathe in or out through the nose or mouth. It doesn't matter. There's very few rules in scanning. It's one of the reasons it's so simple to learn. You're going to find what works for you, what's comfortable for you. The main thing, the one thing, is that you take a deep breath and that you sit in stillness and silence. That's it. You can customize this technique in whatever way you like, and you'll see later when we get to the muscular zones, you can customize those as well. The whole idea is that you work towards expansion. Oddly, rules are contractive by nature, a restriction of sorts, a limiting of choices. That's contraction. So we want less rules, actually. So I try to make this technique as simple as possible. The main idea being to just expand, let go, open up, be permeable, available, accessible, agreeable. These are expansive states of mind. So we're going to do it again. This time we're going to take 5 deep breaths, followed by 30 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. And again, these breaths, just do it at a rate that's comfortable to you, to a depth that's comfortable to you. We're just opening up. Everyone's different. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that everyone experiences the same thing completely differently. So find what works for you, but the main thing is to expand. 5 deep breaths, 30 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. Deep as you can on the last one. 30 seconds, absolute stillness and silence, but continue to breathe. Deep breath. And just note the differences if you feel any changes happening in your body or your state of mind. For me, and I'll just tell you how I feel, and you can think about how you feel, my mind is suddenly quieter. I feel more comfortable with stillness. I'm much more aware of my surroundings, meaning I've come out of my head and into my environment. And I want to make another note here that it's really, really important that you understand the value of even the smallest change. By that, I use the word incremental. Scanning is a progressive, cumulative process. So let's say if you're moving from 1 to 100 in terms of moving into expansion, let's say you only move 1 in this session. I want you to begin to accept the idea that that has tremendous value. Any movement towards expansion has tremendous value. If you needed to stop now and go about your day, go ahead. And I say that because I want to encourage people to take moments to expand. You don't need a half an hour. You know, when I used to meditate, I said, there was some book I read that said, well, you need to do an hour. Well, that's a big obligation to find an hour in your day. So I reduced it to a half an hour. Well, these days, even a half an hour is a lot. So if you can take a minute, 30 seconds to scan, that's great. Do it. It's cumulative. And if at the end of the day you've taken 15 one-minute sessions, that's 15 minutes. And again, that's not a requirement, that's just a suggestion. But the idea is to begin to get it into your mind and in your awareness, your sensibilities, that any amount of expansion, scanning or whatever you want to call it, has value. So that you begin to say, well, I've got time to take 30 seconds right now to just sit and do nothing and be silent, which is expansive. Because if we find that we're waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect opening in our life, we may never do it. So just, you know, we have a tendency these days when we have a second to go to our phone. I do it. It's the hardest thing in the world not to do. I go to my phone, read the news, check my email, go on websites. So see if you can begin to substitute some of those moments you have for your phone with scanning and see how it makes you feel. Again, we're trying to achieve balance. We're not trying to get rid of the things we do all day. We're trying to move towards expansion so we have balance in our life, which makes us happier and more calm and more accepting and clearer of mind. Last phase, 7 deep breaths, followed by a full minute of absolute stillness and silence, and then we're going to get into what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique. So this time, 7 deep breaths, expansive breaths, deep as you can, followed by a full minute, 60 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Don't move a muscle. The reason that's important is because you're making a deliberate choice to change your state of being. We tend to, even when we're sitting, be in a state of movement, distraction, looking around. So we're going to go, no, nothing. So that's the difference, and that's why I say absolute stillness and silence, but of course continue to breathe. 7 deep breaths, 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. Two more. Last one. 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence, but continue to breathe. Deep breath. And again, just take a moment to assess what's happened, what's changed. What are you feeling? What's different? You're building a consciousness of what it feels to be expanded. We spend a lot of time contracting. So we're trying to build an awareness of what it feels to be expanded, what it means to shift from contraction to expansion. When you become more aware of expansion and your ability to move into a more expanded state, that becomes an option in your life. And we tend to think we don't have the ability to change our state of mind. We think we need a drink. We think we need to smoke a joint. We think we need to go to the therapist or the chiropractor. We think somebody else has to do it for us. So what you're starting to understand is you can do it for yourself. You're starting to understand that you can change your state of being. So when we ask ourselves, how do I feel? Then you're learning what it feels like to be expanded. You know, sometimes you get to the point where you forget what it is to be expanded. You don't even know what that feels like. It's been so long since you've let yourself go. And so you're reminding yourself, you're going, oh, I have a choice. I can be in that state, and I know how to get there. And it feels good. We tend to think of letting go as dangerous, letting go of control, letting go of our intention, letting go of our protective, muscular, and emotional structures, which we build to protect ourselves emotionally and physically. We think if we let go of that, we're at risk. So you're also learning that it's safe, it's okay to do that, and it feels good. And I will admit to you that very often when I begin to expand simply through the breaths, I start to get emotional. And I always go, what's that? Well, what are we doing when we get through our day? We're holding on to our emotions to get through the day. You can't walk around a blubbering mess or, distracted emotionally. You have to get through your job. You have to get through your relationship, your obligations. So you hold those emotions in. So as you start to expand, you start to feel. That can be scary. That can be pleasurable. But again, just take a note. Oh, look what happens when I let go. When I stop contracting and I expand, I make myself available to what's really going on inside me, which is frequently, especially these days, a lot of emotion, a lot of tension, anger, fear, sadness, joy. Those things can happen too. So you're allowing that to happen. That's expansion. So just take a note of these changes, how you feel, as a reference. So when it happens next time, you're more familiar with it and you can more easily move into that space without getting concerned or nervous about it. It's great. Okay, so that's the preliminary part of scanning. We've done that. We've kind of opened ourselves up. So now we get into the nuts and bolts, which, as we said at the beginning of the session, is the incremental release of muscular tension. So again, as you're building this awareness of your contractive or expansive state, what you start to note, what I noted when I first did this technique, is that I carried around a lot of muscular tension without even being conscious of it. There was a subconscious holding going on in all the muscles in my body. That's how I faced the day. Even when I was lying in bed at night and sleeping, I'd wake up and I'd felt, wow, I'm sort of holding a tension of sorts. But that I could get rid of that. I could let go of that. But if I tried to just relax, just said to some, if someone says to you, relax, what's the first thing you do? You tense up. So if you go through your body incrementally, through these muscular zones, you can piece by piece start to unravel the tension in your body. Piece by piece. If your body is a brick path, the yellow brick road, you're taking it one brick at a time. So we start with specific areas, what I call muscular zones. And again, you can break this up into any, way you like. But this is the way I've done it, so follow along. Again, this is a totally customizable technique. I don't own it. I didn't really even invent it. I just discovered that it existed, and I gave it a name for my reference, but do it however you like. The point being to expand. Thaddeus Golis, on whom I base this book, talks a lot about locking things down and trying to grab a hold of and control things, like saying this is mine, and this is this, and you can't change it because it's this, not that. These are contractions. So the whole point of this technique is to expand, let go. So you can invent a name for something, but if you really want to be expansive, at some point you'll let that name go. Names are just contractions. The whole point is to keep expanding. We're going to start with zone 1, the face. On my count, I want you to release as much muscular tension as you can from your face. And it could be slight. But what we're doing, again, is this. Squeeze your hands together. 3, 2, 1, release. See that feeling? Squeeze 3, 2, 1, and release. That feeling of, not having to make an effort. The muscles are the perfect metaphor for the contraction-expansion continuum, because they can either be contracted or expanded. So we're going to do that with the muscles now, starting with the face. 3, 2, 1, and release. My face always droops a little bit when I do that. This snap is basically the turning of the switch, the turning off of power to those muscles. When you're contracting a muscle, you're exerting energy. Your muscle doesn't stay contracted unless you keep it contracted. So when you flip that switch and say, I'm going to stop, I'm going to cut off the power to those muscles, they just release. And that's it. So we're going to learn to do that throughout our body. Again, the face. 3, 2, 1, and release. And that's it. So all you've done is turned off the power to that particular muscle group. Again, what we're doing is training ourselves. We're heightening our awareness of the fact that we have the power to do that. We have so much power within our own control to control our state of being, our state of existence, our state of expansion or contraction. We just have to practice. It's like anything. If I want to be an ice skater, I have to practice. Very simple to do. The discipline is in the practice. So here we go. The face. 3, 2, 1. Look at your face in the mirror if it helps, and watch the change. 3, 2, 1, and release. See? That's all we're doing. That's all scanning is. The incremental release of muscular tension. So we're starting with the face. Again, the face. 3, 2, 1, and release. You feel that? Very important that you register that sensation of You can do that any time in the day. If you're sitting somewhere, you're waiting at the DMV or something, and just go, just 3, 2, 1, and just all that contraction, all that muscular tension is a way of keeping it together that you can release at any time. Just go. Usually what happens when you release a muscle is you tend to feel like you want to take a breath because you've been holding your breath. That's all we're doing. And just reinforcing that that's what's going on with scanning. The incremental release of muscular tension. So let's continue. One more time on the face. 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, you can't contract and expand at the same time. So even the smallest expansion, the smallest release is moving you away from contraction and towards expansion. It's cumulative. So even the smallest amount counts. We move to zone 2, which is the top of the head. Just tune into the top of your head, the thinking muscles as I call them, and just see if you can let go of the smallest amount of muscular tension on my count. 3, 2, 1, and release. And you may feel a sort of slackening sensation, as if you've been holding the muscles, the skin, like a crunched up rag, and then you sprayed it with a water mister, and it just, all that fabric just relaxed and just dropped off the side of your head. The top of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. One of the great things that starts to happen when you scan is, as you release one area, other areas follow suit. Your body's connected. Everything knows what's going on everywhere else. That's why sometimes you'll scratch yourself here and you'll feel a tingling over there. Everything's connected. So just now when I released the tension in the top of my head, my shoulders dropped. And that will happen, and watch for that. And that's great, because you're really trying to relax the entire being. We're working specific areas, but it will influence everything else, which is exactly why, as you begin to relax your physicality, your muscles, your mind, like a muscle, will also relax. And as a hand holds on to a ball, your mind holds on to thoughts. Those could be worrisome, concerned, anxious, fearful thoughts. And it will relax those parts of your brain that hold on. It will let go of those thoughts. They'll drift away, and you'll be left with a clear, calm mind. And if you're anything like me and you have a constant dialogue going in your head, it's just genetic. My dad was the same way. You'll find that the volume drops until there's silence, and you're sitting in absolute stillness and silence, with nothing going on in your mind except an awareness of the beating of your heart, the sounds of the room, the feeling of the air on your skin. You'll have come back to your, what I call, original state. You'll just be a human being. It's a very calm, still, quiet place. That's the goal. Zone 3 is the back of the head. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, and release. And just, if you're trying to make sense of this process, that's fine. I'm a great one for trying to make sense of things. But I will tell you this. Scanning is an illogical process. It doesn't make sense because it's not based on a continuum of thoughts that all add up to a conclusion. It's the opposite of that. It's the letting go of ideas and thoughts and rationale. And the beauty of the process is that you just do it. You don't think about it. You just do it and note the results. So there's a certain amount of trust involved. There's times when I'll start to scan, I'll go, why am I doing this now? There's so much I have to be doing. There's so much I need to be thinking about. I can't let go right now. I can't afford the time. This is what my mind is saying. It's trying to make sense of this choice. But I've learned that because scanning is not a logical process, I just do it anyway. Just do it. No matter what's going on, find a way to release muscular tension. It makes no sense, but it works. This is what I've learned. Zone 4 is the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. And again, my shoulders dropped. Everything's associated. This is a cumulative process, as I said. One thing builds on another. The reason we start with a small muscle group is because it influences everything else, and there's a build until everything lets go, and you'll find yourself suddenly slumped in your chair, just as relaxed and as quiet and as still as you could possibly be. In a truly expanded state, and this is the contradiction in my teaching this technique, words are unnecessary. Words are a contraction, a formation of letters, words, sentences, sound, to communicate, to advance an agenda. When you're in a completely expanded state, there's nothing to be done. There's nothing you need to do. You're just existing. So I start to find myself becoming more and more quiet, which is great. That's a great sign that I am expanding. The contradiction, and Thaddeus Golis talks about in his book, The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, the contradiction, he said, in writing this book is that he was trying to codify or solidify a concept or idea, which actually was in opposition to the very thing he was teaching, was that what we're trying to do is let go. But he says, at one point he says in the book, it's very funny, he says, I thought of not writing the book because of that, but I thought, there's really no more point in writing it than not writing it. It doesn't matter, so I might as well. And I'm glad he did, because in sharing his ideas, he enabled me to discover a way towards enlightenment and peace and calm. So I thank him for that. So sometimes you just do what you feel. Zone 4, the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. There it goes. There go the shoulders. So let's follow with the shoulders, which is zone 5. Let them drop the smallest amount. 3, 2, 1, and release. Deep breath. Another. So again, take note of the changes. We've moved that much farther. We're that much more expanded. And if you find yourself saying, I can't do this anymore, I've got to get on with my day, go ahead. It's fine. You're just that much more expanded. Or not. It doesn't matter. If it works for you, it works. If it doesn't, you find your own way. Something drew me to this technique. I'm assuming something has drawn you to this technique. In my case, it's a seeking for a path that will allow me to be at peace, to be calm, to be centered, to face the challenges of my life with more clarity and joy. I think we're all looking for that. If this works for you, fantastic. If not, find yours. That's fantastic. I celebrate that. Zone 6 is the chest, the stomach, the front of the waist. Let them go. 3, 2, 1, and release. And sometimes when I've let go of a certain amount of muscular tension, I'll find myself going, why was I holding on to that? What was I doing? I didn't even know that was there. What was I doing? Well, you were protecting yourself. It's instinctive. We keep a muscular guard up to protect ourselves. We're vulnerable as human beings, so it's natural. There's nothing wrong with it, but we're just shifting that. The chest, stomach, front of the waist, zone 6, 3, 2, 1, and release. Deep breath. And take deep breaths when you feel. You don't have to wait for me. Again, customize this to yourself. You're going to begin to understand your own reality in terms of the contraction, expansion continuum. So follow your own lead. You can take one lesson if you're interested in this technique and then never come back again. That's fantastic. If this sparks in you a way to expand on your own way, do that. Zone 7 is down the back and into the waist and pelvic region. 3, 2, 1, and release. I always say the pelvic region is fraught with anxiety and tension. It's the area of sexuality and, if I may be so frank, waste elimination. So we tend to hold that area out of a sense of protecting those feelings and those urges. And we feel like to let go is sort of risky. What's going to happen? Well, you're safe. You're just sitting in a chair. So nothing's going to happen. You can afford to let go of the smallest amount of pelvic tension. So see what that's like. 3, 2, 1, and just release. And pelvic tension tends to be experienced as a clenching of sorts. So just unclench. Just like the fist and the hands. 3, 2, 1, release. Same thing. The pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. I always feel myself kind of sinking into my chair as I release the tension there. So if you experience that, go with that. You're awakening a part of you that is very capable but unfamiliar. We tend to contract a lot more than we expand. We need to contract to survive, but you also need to expand to survive. If you do nothing but contract, you will implode, and we know it. I've spoken to people recently who said, I don't know what to do. I keep trying. I keep, let's say I'm in sales. I keep making phone calls. I keep writing emails. I keep posting. I keep doing it. It's just not working. I keep trying. What's happened? They've imploded. They've cut themselves off from their own instincts. They're so contracted that they've cut off literally half of their potential. And it's like you're running into a wall. So when you feel that, that's the time to expand. That's the time to let go. Stop trying for just a moment. Release. 3, 2, 1, let go. See what happens when you do nothing. Open yourself up to possibilities. And suddenly things will become available to you that you'd completely forgotten about because you had closed yourself off. Zone 8, the final zone, is down the legs, across the knees and into the feet. 3, 2, 1, and release. And again, if you go, I don't know how to do that, what? That's okay. Just thinking, or putting out the intent of expansion will expand you. That's an expansive thought. You've given yourself the option, the opportunity to do the opposite of what you've been doing. You know what I might do? I might go right instead of left. Never occurred to me, and just thinking about that change of direction will put you in that change of direction. And you hear this again. This is why I say I didn't invent scanning. I'm tuning into a kind of a universal truth that we all know. There was a book that's out, and now I can't remember the name of it. If someone knows, type it in. Where it said basically it talked about intention, about how if you think about what you want, you will manifest it in your life. And this is a universal truth that we all know. Someone took it and solidified it into a book, and it sold millions. But it's basically, we kind of all knew that. And you all know this. What I'm teaching you, you all know this. We all know this, that we have another option. We just forget or lose touch with it. So all I'm doing is presenting a form of that expansion, that intention, that suits me, that resonated for me, and sharing it with you in case it resonates for you. These lessons will always be free. I expect that many of you will take these lessons and it will light a fire in you that will inspire you to have your own technique that you will teach. We're all basically practicing the same thing in different forms. This is one form. So we've done all 8 zones: the face, the top of the head, the back of the head, the neck, the shoulders, the chest, stomach, and waist, the back down into the pelvis, and all the way down into the feet. And again, as I said, if you don't know what it feels like to relax your feet, well, just think about it, and they'll start to relax. One of the clearest signs that you have begun to expand is when you feel, let's say, throbbing in your feet, as you start to release the tension in your feet, because you've opened the vessels up to more blood flow, which is a healing phenomenon. The blood goes where the healing is needed. That's why something throbs when you hurt it. So when you start to relax, you may feel a stronger awareness of your heartbeat. You may feel a throbbing in certain parts of your body, which perhaps were closed off to blood. This is all very healthy. Relaxation never hurts, it only helps. The incremental release of muscular tension is healing, it's clarifying, it's expansive, and it works. So that's it. Again, I went over a half an hour. I always try to keep these to a half an hour, but I can't seem to do that. By the way, Thaddeus talks about it in his book, when you're completely expanded, time is just irrelevant. We divide life into time so that we can organize our life. But time is a man-made phenomenon. We created the concept of time. Years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds. We made these divisions so that we could say, I'll meet you at 10 o'clock for that meeting, or let's have lunch at noon. It was a necessary contraction to organize our lives, but time is a construct. So as you start to expand and let go of all constructs, ideas, thoughts, feelings, concepts, as you start to let go of them, what you'll notice, and this is one of the greatest side effects of expansion through scanning or any other way, is you stop worrying about time. You don't really think about what time it is or what day it is. It doesn't matter. You ever have that feeling when you're on vacation you forget what day it is? Why? Because it doesn't matter. When you're on vacation, it doesn't matter. You can let go of that construct, that contraction, because you've expanded. Now, you need to go back to work. You need to make your appointments. You need to keep your obligations, so you will take on those constructs again when you re-enter your working life. Of course, as I said, we're looking for a balance. Neither is completely all good or bad. We just want both in balance so that we become centered. And when you're centered, you feel good. And that's the goal. to feel good. Why not? So that's it for today. It's called Sqanning. Sqanning. Sqanning is, by definition, my definition, a relaxation technique which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension, going from this to this, going from this to this, going from this to this, to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. It's a cumulative, progressive process. Don't be afraid to start small. I started with breaths. Take one breath. That helps. Relax one muscle. That helps. The point is to do it, and do it as much as you can or like to do. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and the more capable you will be of inducing an expanded state. I end every session with rule number 1, love yourself. Rule number 1, love yourself. It's great to love others. We must love others, but start here. Love yourself. This is what you were given. This is the package, the arrangement, the contraction you were given. And when you love, you expand. Love is the most expansive act because you accept. Acceptance. Permeable. When you become permeable, you allow for others to come in. You allow for everything to exist. You accept all. So start there. Love yourself, and then everything else will follow. Have yourself a great weekend. I will post this on my Facebook page. It'll stay up for a while. And then I also post it permanently on the Sqanning Facebook page, Sqanning, and search for that page and follow as many sessions as you like. Every session is basically the same. I do these sessions so that people can ask questions during the session. They can type them in and I can answer them. So feel free to do that. Or, of course, message me on Facebook or anytime, anywhere. I'm happy to answer questions about the process and happy to share it and thrilled if it helps you. Take care. Have yourself a great weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.